Welcome to Makers International, a podcast of makers from 3 countries, 2 continents, and featuring 5 guys separated only by the same language. Here's your host, Richard Morley.
Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good times, whatever time it is, wherever you're listening. Joined with me as always, Mr. Chris Cute.
How you doing, everybody?
Mr. Joe Whitaker.
You're right, Sam, yeah.
And he doesn't even need an introduction these days. It's Jamie Page.
Damn right. How y'all doing?
That sounded kind of Clint Eastwood. You're damn right.
Somebody's feeling lucky. No, we won't go there. We're not going there. Excellent. As always, a few shout outs from last week's show. But first and foremost, a big welcome to all our live listeners, because you're here every week, most of you, and you never get a shout out. So each and every one of our live listeners, hello. Right, shout outs from last week. We have Mr. Jim Dockrell, SA Maker, Be Happy, Paul Lockwood, Andrew McQuillan, and Robin Jacobson. So big thank you to them for getting in touch, being part of the show, and all the rest of it. Don't forget, you can get in touch with us across the social medias and via the website, Makers International Podcast.com. As always, this week's show is brought to you in part by Yorkshire Grit, the Woodturners abrasive paste, and also our good friend Chad over at Mancrafting, who is, I believe, still giving away one of his awesome mugs each month to one of our lucky listeners. If you want to find out more about our sponsors and whatnot, go to the website again, makersinternationalpodcast.com/sponsors. That is right, isn't it, Jamie?
Yes, that is correct.
Excellent. Good stuff. Chris, do we have there's no point asking. I know you've got a question from social media. Do you want to just quickly run over that?
I do, but at first, since you recognized our live listeners, and hey, what's up? Thanks, and that's cool. I want to recognize our listeners on iTunes and also on SoundCloud, and I want to do it in a way of a treat. I'm going to try to do a little magic of radio thing happening today. Okay, guys. So if you're listening to us on iTunes or on SoundCloud, here's what I want you to do. And I'll give you a little backstory to what I'm about ready to do. When we first started doing this podcast, before we actually went on the air, I used to create these scenarios that we would all be in. So it was to help get Richard to be comfortable being the host of the show. Okay, so I'm gonna give you through the magic of radio, because it's up to your imagination. Picture this while you're listening to this show today. Imagine a 13th century dungeon where Richard, Jamie, Joe, and I are shackled to the wall, wearing nothing but shabby underpants with long beards, and the conversation you're about to hear is just the way we pass the time of day, and because we're in there. And the only reason why Richard is the host is because he's the one that's shackled closest to the door, and they hand him the food, and we have to be nice. All right. So
that's a regular day for me.
That's today. That's today's setting.
And it's good money for that round, yeah.
Yeah, it's that's you know what? If we ever want to try to do this podcast in a Monty Python theme, I think that would work. Anyway,
just a flesh wound.
Today's social media question. I'm sorry, I found that rather humorous. It may have died. I don't know. Okay, the question for today is: gentleman asks. Okay, we're gonna get serious. I apologize. A gentleman does ask. He says, "I've turned," and Richard, Richard and Jamie. I'm gonna direct this question to you, because I know that you guys, if anybody, will have an answer. Joe, it's not that you don't have an answer, but you failed at your audition today, so you're just you're not happy. Okay. Gentleman said, I've turned 4 small legs for an end table I'd like to make. But there's a detail that I would like to add to them, and I'm not sure how to go about doing it. And I hope you guys can explain, without having to use visuals, to this person how to do this. He says the legs are tapered, obviously fat at the top, getting thin at the bottom. And I'd like to add flutes around the entire leg, running lengthwise, roughly 4 inches from the top and to about 3 inches from the bottom. How do I go about doing that on a tapered leg? He wants to go ahead and put the flutes, lengthwise on the legs all the way around it. around the spindle, which is taper, but he's not sure quite how to approach that. So, Richard, Jamie, do you guys have an answer for him?
You want to go first, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I instantly would go down the router route on that one, and I know there are gizmos available. There is such a thing. I don't know if it's still available, but certainly they are sort of on the second-hand market available, called a router lathe, and it's a lathe, but it has got a carriage for your router that you can then move up and down. It's been like kind of medieval, actually, not quite shackled to the wall, but you wind a handle and it's sort of kind of 2 pulleys and 2 cables, and it pulls the router up and down along the length of the kind of the spinning axis of that machine. So you turn the router on and you can basically wind the handle and it'll move the router along from sort of the headstock end down to the tailstock end, and you can adjust it so that it moves on a taper as well. Plus you've got the depth adjustment for the router. But if you haven't got anything like that, and you presumably he's already got a lathe because he's turned the spindles, you could just knock up some kind of plywood framework to hold the router around the spindle, set it on a taper, and then just slide the router up and down the from headstock to tailstock to do however many flutes you need around the outside.
Jamie, is that pretty much what you were going to say?
Well, first of all, I would try and do it on a scroll saw. But once I figured out that I couldn't do it on the scroll saw, there's actually a website called which I found out from Carl frickin' Jacobson, called flutemaster.com, and they actually sell sell a jig called the Flute Master, which is actually designed to do exactly that.
Let me interrupt, Jimmy, real quick, because I think both you and Richard are talking about doing it while that leg is obviously still on the lathe.
Yes, it's still on the lathe. I believe it clamps to the bed of the lathe, but I don't really see no reason why you couldn't just make that jig yourself. It seems a simple enough process.
But let me ask you another stupid question, because I'm thinking about this, and because I am neither I'm not an expert at the lathe. Wouldn't you need the ability to lock like the headstock in place so that when you hit that with a router, that spindle wouldn't twist on you or turn?
You would have to have an indexing system on your lathe for that to work. Otherwise, it would just spin.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And Richard, if you don't mind me asking, what type of router bit would you use to create that kind of flute effect? I mean, I guess you could use a V bit or whatever kind of flute you decided, but if you wanted just a typical round one, I mean, what kind of bit would you use?
Well, I mean, if you want kind of a standard flute, then you'd probably use a cove cutting bit or a box cove bit, something like that. But yeah, you could use a V bit. I mean, there is such a bit available for doing barley twists, like the spiral twists.
Yeah.
So there's that profile of cutter, but I mean, at the end of the day, anything that's not got a bearing on the bottom of it, you could go mad with it. You could literally imagination overload. So
all right, awesome. I hope that answers that question then.
Actually, Paul Lockwood made a good point out in the chat as well. He goes, mole grips work a treat when you don't have an indexing system.
Yeah, I mean, but potentially you could just clamp it. If you made the spindle, presumably it's going to be square at the top to fit into the aprons around the table. So you could probably just clamp just a normal kind of screw clamp just to hold it in place. But
all right, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Imagination overload for that one. That you can get some really cool.
Okay, well, I just thought it was a good question. I knew that we had at least one of us in the room that could do it, and I thought Jamie had a fighting chance.
Yeah,
Joe, I'm sorry. I know you're not really big on the lathe, but it's all right. And neither am I. Anyway, so a good question. All right, so awesome.
It'd probably be an interesting exercise to do it just with a router, actually, because you could. Like Jamie said, there's no reason why you can't kind of build some kind of plywood box-shaped thing with 2 pivot points, and then just pass the router up. If you can make a surfacing jig to flatten a board, you could do it raised over some kind of
Sure.
rotating access.
Maybe build a router sled that has the same incline as the taper of the leg or something of that nature, that you could just start at the small and okay, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. Sounds like I mean, because you also have some. If you also have something that could actually go into the tall rest as well, and have like a flat bed, you could just lay the router flat on that as well. If you've got an indexing system as well, and then just spin it round and run it along there, because it's going to be the same level all the way along.
You just need to do the depth then, wouldn't you? Like if it was tapered.
Yeah, you just need to get the angle correct, and then you're good to go. Because I mean, otherwise because the whole point there would be that you don't want one part of the leg to be deeper cut than the other part. You want it to be an even flute. All right, awesome. It sounded like a good question, so I figured, you know what, I'll throw it out there, see if you guys had an answer, and you did. I'm so impressed.
Do you know what I thought? A thought has just occurred to me actually. I don't think you'd need to set the jig at an angle, because you can do off-center turnings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you marked on the tailstock end, if you, instead of having the dead center, if you then marked it around like the 12, 6, 3 and 9 o'clock positions or whatever, offset by a certain amount, that would adjust the level of the actual spindle, thereby you could then effectively rotate.
Yeah, so you would make one cut, loosen up the tailstock, flip it over, reattach it to the different marking, and then reattach it, make a second cut. So yeah, okay, that would work. It sounds like a pain in the butt. I think I'd really rather buy a jig.
Carl Jacobson just said in the chat that the Flute Master actually comes with the indexing jig.
Oh, sweet.
As well, so that's obviously handy.
Awesome. See? Look at that.
It's all good. It's all good. And actually, that kind of is a good segue into this evening's topic, isn't it? We're going to try, I think, it says in inverted commas, try and talk about limitations, knowing your own limitations, and how do you exceed them, and all those sorts of things. So, I mean, do you want me to kind of kick this off a bit, because it's sort of. Or actually, I suppose potentially Chris could, because it's sort of your fault that we're heading down this road.
It is kind of my fault. Well, I guess we'll eventually get to the reason why that this came up. But beforehand, I've spent a little bit of time, and you guys can, please, I mean, and you folks out in the chat chime in as well. But I think I've narrowed down the limitations that. And I'm talking mostly shop-based. I'm not talking life-based. So we're not here to tell you how to run your friggin' life. We're talking about how this relates to a shop atmosphere. I think there are 4 basic limitations that we see. The first of which would be a psychological limitation. This is going to be where perhaps you don't think that you are capable of doing something, so that kind of limits your ability of doing it. It's like, oh, I can't do that, and so you never try. That would be a psychological limit. The second one would be like a practical limit, where that either time or the resources you have at hand limit your capability of doing something. All right, so you've got psychological, you've got practical limits, you've got physical limits on top of that as well. I mean, if you know that you have to take on a job, and in order to complete this job on time and get it done, you got to work 20 hours a day for the next 6 days. Physically, you just know that is not possible. So that's a limitation that we know and can recognize. And the last one probably relates more to real life than it does the shop atmosphere, but I think there's a relate here too as well. And it's an emotional limit. And an emotional limit can mean that while somebody may say, can you make me an entire living room of Queen Anne furniture? If you're in the right psychological mind, and we'll talk about this further down the line, ideally you're going to say, well, yes, I'm sure I can, but no, I really don't want to. That's an emotional limit that you've placed upon yourself. So I think those 4, psychological, practical, physical, and emotional, are the 4, I think, core limits that we may talk about, and everything else that gets talked about can be probably indexed below one of those headings. So if you want to take it from there, Richard, go ahead, because that's pretty much what I've thought and how I've looked into this, what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of looked at it, and I first of all, I put my kind of military hat on in some respects. It's always one of those things that comes down to planning and that in terms of limitations, and it's always, and this actually works in real life, particularly at work. If your boss says, can you organize such and such, so and so, you've always got 3 limitations regardless of what you're trying to do, and that is time, space, and resources. So have you got enough time to complete it? Have you got enough resources available, whether that's materials, people, or whatever? Have you got enough space to do what you physically need to do? Because if you've got like a small 8-foot by 6-foot workshop, can you build 4 8-foot tall, 4-foot wide bookcases? You know, that sort of thing. And actually, always, if it goes to work, then it's always about money as well, isn't it? You know, have you got enough money available to fund what it is you're doing? So they're the easy ones. I didn't think of it in terms of a psychological or emotional thing, but actually this does work as well. I think if you put it into the maker environment, my instinct would be confidence. Do you know, psychologically or emotionally have the confidence to take on that project? Do you have the experience? And that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have the knowledge, because you can generally know or work through something, but not necessarily have the experience. And that wouldn't necessarily stop you, but we'll kind of get onto that. And the other one, I guess, is your skill set. Because there's knowing and have been, I mean, I know how to weld, but I can't weld. I know how to turn wood, but I'm not a wood turner.
Well, here's how and if you guys chime in, please. I don't want to be the only one talking today. But as far as your skill set goes, I think the skill set and your limitations that you put upon yourself as far as your skill set goes, and I would hope, and I know that not all people do, but I would hope that the majority of people would do this and say, the only time that is going to limit to me is when you give me a time constraint that doesn't allow me the time to learn it and do it. Because I honestly believe, true or false, I honestly believe if you put something in front of me, I can get it done if I want to do it bad enough. And could I do an entire living room of Queen Anne style furniture? Is that currently in my skill set to where I can give you a deadline to when it can be done? No, it's not. But if you're asking me if I can complete it, yes, I can. But if you come to me as a customer and say, hey, I'd like to have this done in a month's time, then what you were talking about, Richard, my answer is going to be no, because my limitation, I know I've never done this before. It's going to take me a lot longer than that. So that's a different type of approach, I guess, to what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I'll jump in there, if that's all right. Very similar example. With talking about Queen Anne furniture and having a big project, and if there's a time scale and stuff like that that you wouldn't take on a job, I think perfect example is the Maloof rocking chair that I still haven't finished. I was approached by a lady at the hospital. I'd love you to make me a rocking chair. I'd love one like this. Of course, it was a Maloof style rocking chair. And of course, the first words out of my mouth was, I'm sure I could make it, but I don't know how long it would be. So basically the agreement was, I don't care if it takes you years, I want you to make it for me. Can you do it? So I said, okay. So of course I've used my own money for the material. So I haven't got that hanging over my head. So that would be, if you're able to, obviously, would be a good road to go down. If you trust the person, of course, but also if you do find it's just your confidence to being able to deliver, if you know you haven't taken somebody's money, I think that can help a lot, because you think that you can walk away a lot easier. They've lost nothing. It's all on you that way. I do find confidence is what actually drives me the most, especially with a piece of furniture, something that's going to be used physically, I suppose is the best way to put it. Like, you're going to sit on a chair. So if I was making it for myself, I've got every confidence in I can make a rock solid chair and it's going to live up to everything that I do. But there's something in my mind that if I make this for somebody else, I'm going to give it to them, and the first time they sit in it, it's going to fall to pieces. Now, if I stop and think about it, of course, that's not going to happen, but it's always in my mind, and that's where the confidence issue comes in. I've got so much respect for tradesmen like Richard to be able to go into somebody else's home and build stuff, sometimes with them watching, even though you know in your mind, you know what you're doing and you're doing it right. I still feel as if I'm going to do something wrong and it's going to wreck it for them or something like that. And I don't know how to get over that kind of thing.
That's kind of a psychological thing. But you know what? I think you've got the right approach to it. It's not that you're not saying, oh, I can't do that. It's like, you're saying I can do that, but it's not going to be in the time frame that maybe you're going to be comfortable with. I mean, I can get there, but it rather than costing you 100, it may cost you 1,000 because I'm going to make some friggin' mistakes.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be in the doing it for somebody else setting. It could be like, because that rocking chair that you're making at the moment, Joe, that's for somebody else, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But if it was for you, and it was actually going to be, for your living room, do you think you'd have a slightly different approach on the sort of the psychological aspect of having, can I do this? Because I think a lot of people see things that other people have made and think that is amazing. Like, I don't know, the tall boy that Matt Cremona's making.
Yeah.
Yeah. There would be a lot of people, I think, put off from doing something like that, making for themselves, not because they can't do it, but because perhaps they think they can't do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty opposite to that. In a way that if I'm doing it for myself, a common phrase comes into what I'm doing, and it's that'll do. If it's something for me and I've got it close because it's for me, that'll do, and it's good enough because I know it'll do the job. It'll look how I want it to look. If I'm doing it for somebody else, there's that much more pressure on for it to be perfect, because you've got often I make for friends, so like it's not a monetary side of it because I don't accept money for gifts, but because it's a gift, you want the gift to be perfect, and if it's not perfect, you start tearing your hair out, and I've got no hair left anyway. So it's like, what do you do at that point if your confidence is shot with a project? Often it's scrap that piece, start again, or push through and try and find a fix for it. But doing it for myself, if I take a big chunk out of it and it's on the back, it's on the back, I'll never see it. If it's a gift for somebody, that chunk out of it, that's no good now, I've got to do it all again. It's that kind of attitude I got for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that puts a certain extra amount of pressure on, doesn't it? I mean, really, presumably, if you take away the time pressure, because if you are making something for somebody else to a schedule, that time pressure is ever present. Has anyone ever had the situation? I got into the situation a couple of weeks ago, working on a project for somebody, and the design was all done, everything was quoted for and materials got, and then halfway through there's a design change, and it went from if you imagine three big bookcases with a corner unit, no big deal, to a large kind of 3 wide set of drawers, just standard drawers, and then a standalone set of 3 drawers, like a bedside table kind of thing, really. And that went from just a standard flat front to angled 45-degree front on the unit and the drawers as well, and that completely threw things out. And it was totally the right decision, because it actually is a lot better than it would have been. But I'd never done angled front drawers, and if you've seen my Instagram or probably in the Facebook group, I posted some pictures of it, and they were a complete headache. And that threw me in terms of, I've said I'm going to do this, but can I do this part? I've never done this bit before. Pretty sure I can. And there's that psychological little seed of doubt in the back of your mind. Is this all going to fall apart because of this one little thing?
Right.
So it might go on.
No, but I think what's admirable about that is that you hesitated, but you didn't stop, because you didn't say I couldn't do it. You just said, I've never done this before. This is going to be a challenge. And then you put your nose to the grindstone and you got it done. And I saw the pictures and you got it done very well. So I think that's the difference, because I think that there are some folks out there who actually do put psychological limits on themselves, because it would be like looking at a gentleman who probably, let's just we're going to just talk about woodworking. This could be any craft. It doesn't matter. But I'm a woodworker, so I'm going to go there. It would be a guy who last month bought his first table saw and is just now finding and discovering the fact that he likes to do woodworking in his shop. And then his wife comes out to him and says, "Can you make me a what's a good example? What the hell? I'll use Matt Corona, or you could use Mark Spagnuolo. Could you make me a secretary like this?" And the guy's going to look at that and go, "No." When the real answer is, "Yeah, honey, but you're going to need to give me like a few friggin' years because I have a lot to learn before I can do that." There's two different ways of looking at that. It's like, because I see some people look at that and go, "Oh, I could never do that." And they just, and so what they've just done is they've just said, "I'm never going to try." But then there are the people who go, "Well, if you want it next week, the answer is no. But if you don't care if it happens in 5 years, then yes, honey, I can make that for you." I mean, I think there's two different approaches, and you took the approach of, well, never really done this before, but you know what? I'm in for a pound. I'm in for a penny. Let's go. I'm going to get it done.
I mean, part of me was thinking I can't really say no, actually, because I'm sort of halfway through the race, as it were. But I don't know if Jamie's had a situation about this where, I mean, you going into the turning environment with things like, I don't know, hollow forms or segmented things or inside out. I mean, there's some really complicated, long-winded turning projects.
Yeah, there's been a few things that I've kind of looked at and I've kind of thought, can I do that? And a few times I've given it a go. A couple of times it's flown off the lathe and hit me on the top of the head. But I've chucked it straight. I've chucked it. Yeah, thanks, Joe. I've just chucked it straight back up and put it straight back on the lathe again and just carried on. Take one example. Inspired by Steve Twidell, he done a crotch piece, like a bowl style thing. I had got given a piece of, I think it was you. He was by Brendan Bacon Soda, and I turned a bowl out of that, and I've never really done anything like that before, or even the winged bowls. And I mean, I've caught my knuckles with it before because I've always turned stuff that I was able to see. And when you're cutting stuff that's 99% air and you can't see where it is, and it's kind of daunting, so yeah, it's kind of a weird experience.
But what kind of I don't know how to phrase the question, really. I mean, you think of something like with the winged bowls. I mean, when they're done and they're finished, they look amazing, and you think, how was that done? Okay, I've maybe watched somebody else do it and think, I've never done that before. That looks a bit dicey, but let's just give it a go. How do you kind of get over that? Don't I?
I know you guys. I'm going to say hate the scroll saw, but I'm going to say it anyway. You guys hate the scroll saw, but I'm going to use the scroll saw as a better example.
Jimmy, I don't hate the scroll saw.
You can't say that you dislike something or you're scared of something until you try it. Now, when it comes to the scroll saw, and me, I'd never seen a scroll saw, touched a scroll saw, anything like that with a scroll saw in person until I saw Sterling's video. And then I got that scroll saw, and within 2 months I was doing portraits.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not going to say it's just because it's me and I've got a talent for it or anything like that at all. Anyone can do that.
Yeah, no, but
anyone can do that.
I agree.
Give it a go.
I
do it.
I think that falls under the the headings that we talked about. That falls under the emotional limits, because Richard will sit here and tell you he hates the scroll saw. Maybe Joe will too, and
Richard's got 2 of them.
Yeah, I know.
I don't have any.
Yeah, no, and we're talking about the same guy who gives me about the size of my shop. But anyway, but I think that falls under the heading of the emotional limits, because there are some things that you want to do, And there are some things that you just emotionally don't want to do because they don't make you happy. You know, it's so if you like doing what you're doing, then I mean, we razz you and give you a hard time all the time about the scroll saw, but just understand it's just because, you know, we don't happen to share the same kind of thing with you. I mean, I absolutely love scroll saw work, and I love the guys that do it. I just don't want to be one of you because that's just not something I want to do.
Making is very much similar to standing on a diving board. If someone pushes you in and you're in a water, you end up in that water. What are you going to do? Sink or swim?
You better know how to swim. Exactly.
I'm sure as hell going to at least try and swim.
Yeah, I mean, could Richard do? Could Joe do? Could Alan do? A tiger like Jamie did. Could I do it? Yes, I could. Could I do it as well? Probably not. But you know what? I could get it done if I wanted to. That's the kind of attitude I think that when we start talking about limitations is you got to realize that, yes, I could. But then the second question always comes up, do I want to? And it's like, no, I don't. So it's not a limit. It's just, I just don't have any interest. I think that emotional thing comes down to not just having any interest in doing it. In some respects, there are other respects where that emotional thing has a different friggin' realm, and we can talk about that later. But I totally hear what you're saying, Jamie. I mean, you picked up a scroll saw, and you know, within 3 months' time, you're doing some killer work. So it's just, you know, if you don't say you can't, just understand.
You just at least got to try.
Yeah, exactly.
Before you completely write it off.
But if you live in Richard's world and you've got a client knocking on your door and you're dealing in a business atmosphere where somebody says, I want this kitchen built and I want it done next week, then you have to be able to say, yes, I can, or no, I can't. And that's not necessarily limiting. There are guys out there who probably could, but if you know you're not one of those guys, then you have to say no. I mean, that's understanding at least one of your limits. That's how that is.
We've actually got a question from the chat. We've kind of related to Richard and I guess being a tradesman. It says there's also a limit which is connected to psychology, undervaluing our work, which is sometimes we're afraid to price a piece feed on which will last too much.
I'm going to let you guys answer that first because I've got my own sort of opinions, but I kind of agree and disagree with that. So, I mean, what would be your view from, I don't know, say selling one of your scroll saw portraits or Joe selling the rocking chair or something like that?
I've not sold one of my big scroll saw portraits yet.
Okay. Well, let's make the scenario. You know your tiger that you made?
Yeah.
I want you to make me one. How much will it cost me?
Probably $1,000 if it's you.
No, genuinely, if somebody said to you,
I genuinely don't know. I've never ever been good at pricing things. I'm the sort of person that would turn around and say, "Oh no, give me what you think." Do you know what I mean? That's generally and a lot of people turn around and they would normally give me more money than what I would have probably asked. You know, say for argument's sake, if I was to make somebody a pen, I would probably charge something along the lines of £10-15 maybe, and they would give me 20 for argument's sake.
You know? And Joe, I know you have some input on this, but I just want to get this in real quick and along the lines of what Jamie's saying is, I once refinished a friend of mine's who had just gotten married, and his bride had a family heirloom that had been handed down to her. It was like 200 years old. It was a cedar chest. It was nothing more than a basic cedar blanket chest that had copper strapping on it. And he knew I knew how to do woodwork. He says, Chris, could you refinish this and make it look brand new again for her? Because I want to give it to her as a present. And I looked at him and said, you know what? Yeah, that's not hard. And one thing I did know at that point in time was finishing and refurbishing furniture. So I took the project on. And I'm telling you, this, oh my God, when he gave me this piece, it was ugly. It was just really not in good shape, but it was very simply made. And I took it apart, refinished it, and that friggin' thing was gorgeous. I mean, it came out absolutely gorgeous. I was shocked at how pretty that thing came out. And I brought it back to him. And I said, Jim, I have it. I had it in the back of at the time I had a Jeep, and a Jeep Cherokee. And I said, Jim, I have it in the back of my truck. I said, I'm going to leave it up to you for what you want to pay me for this. Okay. And I was thinking he's going to say, I'll give you $100. And I would have been happy with that. I took it out of the back of the Jeep, took the blanket off of it, and he saw it. And he looked at me and he went, holy, he says, could I give you 700? And I went, yes, you could. Yes, you could. Because, I would have been happy with 100. Like Jamie's saying, I don't know how to price my work. I don't know what the value is to the person that's actually receiving it. I mean, and so I took the easy approach and I let him decide how much he wanted to pay me. And it turned out to be 7 times more than what I was willing to accept. So I don't know how that limits me or how that pertains to the conversation, but it does relate to what Jamie had to say.
A lot of the time, for me, 9 times out of 10, as long as I get the money back for the materials and maybe a couple of pound more for electricity or something like that, I'm happy. I'd quite willingly do it for nothing.
Personally,
depending on who it is.
I'm when I first sort of started out making things just because I liked making them, and then people would start, can you make that for me? How much would it cost? I seem to remember it being a whole load of band-sawn reindeer that I made, and they're a bit like Holly's snowmen. I was inundated with things, requests for them, and I thought, yeah, this is great. As the years go by and you start ending up into the more actually a business, and that is purely a business, and that's the only reason you make what you make is to put food on the table, keep a roof over your head scenario, you do have to be very much more business minded and a bit sort of hard nosed. And you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people do limit themselves in what they do based on how do I price this, what do I charge. But at the end of the day, you've got to have a bit of common sense is probably the key thing. And I know there's loads of articles and there's loads of YouTube videos on how to price your work. And if you go through any of the craft-based or maker-based Facebook groups, you see the question asked 10 times a day, and 9 times out of 10 the answer is, well, it's very simple. It's your hourly rate plus your materials, add them together, and that's your fee. And that is not the case at all. There are so many other things that are complicated about that. And you have to have the confidence to say, basically, this is what I want to earn from this, and then all the other things on top. And it does skew the price. And I do quotes for people, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money. I probably won't get this job, but that's what I need to charge to make it worth my while. And if I don't get that, then I've got to look for something else. But there's no point in devaluing yourself and saying, oh, I've got to knock 500 quid off this or whatever just to get the job because it's better than nothing. It actually isn't.
Well, at the end of the day, Richard, I mean, and what differs you from myself or Jamie or perhaps even Joe is that you're running a business, and business isn't based on friendships. It isn't based on this. It's based on you doing a service and you making a certain amount of profit. And because you're in this to make money, because you got to feed a family, you got to keep a roof over your head. And so you know what you need to have on a monthly basis, weekly basis, in order to keep that basic essentials, food on the table, roof over the house, family fed and happy. You know what it takes. And so you can't. It's like it makes it real cut and dry when you look at it from a business sense. It's not emotional at all. It's just like, can I do it for that? No, I can't. I can do it for this. Can you pay me that? No, I can't. Have a great day. All right, on to my next project. It's like
it's kind of that simple, actually. It kind of hurts to say it, but that is generally the case. And I know loads of lads that have take that view and they are successful as a result of that. Obviously what they do is good quality stuff that gets them more work, but the amount of times you go, I didn't get that job for that price, somebody else got it because they were half that price. And then you go back to do something else and you see what you didn't get and what somebody else did. And the first question is, while you're here, can you have a look at that other thing that you didn't? That I know loads of people that are like that. And that, I think, ties in with the limitations as well, because I think there are a lot of people there that their limitation isn't quite where they think it is, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Some people they limit themselves very narrowly, and they can do more, but they don't necessarily have the confidence, or they're building up their experience and their knowledge to push those limits. And there are other people that think, oh, it looks that easy, I can do that. And you've got to have that confidence to say, yeah, I can do that. But you need a bit of an aptitude and a bit of sort of a skill set in order to, walk the walk, as it were.
I just need Festals.
Do you really want to go down that? Do you really want to go down that
really.
road?
No. I do have a couple of questions, though.
Thank God.
Hopefully not festival related.
A couple of really good questions, actually. The first one comes from Slap Stuff Together. Goes, how do you guys overcome other people's doubts in your abilities? Does it drive you to prove them wrong?
Oh, yeah, a lot of the time.
I'm just going to say 4 words to them. Oh, it's on now.
Yeah, I mean, and
Definitely.
that classic example was the scroll saw off, router off that we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that,
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to take a totally different approach to that, because I don't take threats very well, and I don't take challenges very well. And so if somebody challenges my ability to do something I bet you can't, then you know what? I'm going to make them suffer. And I'm never going to, because I don't need to prove to you what I can do. I know what I can do. So you know what? I don't take those challenges on. At some point in the future, with that little thought in the back of my mind, yes, I probably will do something, but I won't give them the satisfaction of knowing that I'm answering them. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to give it. I'm not giving it to you. If you want to come at me with that crap, then I'm not going to give it to you. I mean, I will answer your question, but it may be 6 months from now. But yeah, because you challenged me, am I going to do it? No, because you know what? You don't run my friggin' life. I'm going to do what I want to do when I want to do it.
But at the same time, there is potential for that to kind of sow the seed, and you think, yeah, let's give that a go. Let's give it a whirl.
Even if it's a monumental balls up, it's a look. So I'll still give it a go.
It does drive a lot of people. It drives me for sure. I mean, like, from a young age, from a health point of view, I've always had doctors telling me I won't be able to do this, I won't be able to do that, I won't be able to feed myself, that kind of thing. So it's always been instilled in me from a young age to prove people wrong. And even now, she'll probably go mad at me for saying this, but my mom basically doubts everything that I do. I don't know whether she does it intentionally because she knows that that'll push me forward to do it. But if I come up with a design, if I've designed a new project and I'll like put all my time into it, I'm gonna make this, it'll be, and you think you can do that? Yeah, why not? Like, and then it's like you get that in, it's like, yeah, I'll show you. Kind of, do you know, it's that kind of attitude.
No, I get it. I get it.
Drive a lot of people, so it is good to have that. But I would like to mention, you still have to listen to what people say, because I think there's some jobs that's very health and safety minded. So, say for example, we need a new staircase. I know I could make a staircase, and I know I could probably do a good job of it, and I'd be happy for it to be my staircase. But if somebody else messaged me and says, "Can you build us a staircase in my house?" and my mum and dad said to me, "I wouldn't do that if I was you, because if you get that wrong and something goes bad, you know." So it's those kind of things. You do have to listen to what people say, because they're not always just being nasty or doubting you. There is some thought behind it. So depending on what the project is, either stuff them or take the time and think about it properly along with them. But yeah, I think it's a driving factor for sure. So
you know what, I think a good way to look at this is and I think I agree with you, Joe, because my limitations and my thinking of what I can and can't do depend on two things. Am I doing if I'm doing it for myself, then oh heck yeah, I can do it, no problem, and I'll feel comfortable. But if you're asking me to do it for somebody else, or if somebody else is asking me to do it for them, then my confidence begins to wane, because like you said, I don't want people if I've never built a staircase before, for instance, then I don't necessarily want you to be my trial because I would really much rather build one for myself first to know, okay, this is good, and this is solid, and know how to do it. So it's like, if it's for me, then I can do anything. If it's for you, well, I may scratch my head and think twice before I say yes. It's like, that's all. Let me do it for myself first.
All right. Whenever I go into look at a job or a project or whatever for somebody, I always, and I hate to use the two words, but I always have like a quick risk assessment. And it's not like a health and safety sort of like, are there this, there, and that. It's basically, is there anything electrical involved? Is there anything plumbing involved? And is there anything structurally involved? And that could be, do I need to move a plug or a socket? Do I need to do this? Or even you might be halfway through the job and everything's going swimmingly, and the client will go, oh, while you're here, could you, any chance you could sort of move or add a new socket here, or do, this tap's dripping? I'm like, nope, but here's the number for my plumber, here's the number for my electrician, and I'll get them, give them a call and let them do it. Because like you said, with the stairs, probably, I've moved sockets in the house, I've changed taps in the house, but you don't want me flooding your house or burning your house down because I got something wrong. And I don't want that risk associated with it. If I build a table and the leg becomes loose or it falls down, or if you take a bump because the seat fell apart, that's probably not the end of the world. But I'm not doing anything which is structural, water, or electrical, because that's not what I do.
Okay. Let me go ahead. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Richard. Go ahead.
All I was going to say was, and that kind of comes in with some woodworking projects as well. It's like, oh, we need a new front door. No, I'm not doing that. I could, and I could do it safely. But if anything happens and I'm stuck at 5 o'clock in the evening and the door's not back on, that could be a problem.
Yeah.
Or a window or something like that. I'm like, that's just not worth the aggro. And sometimes, just very quickly, you get more respect from clients who say, that's not something I do, I can't do that. And just being honest, because there's no point trying to come up with some flashy reason why you can't do it. So no, that's not something I do.
All right. So, but I want to approach this, and it may be a good time to wrap this conversation up. And I'd like to do it this way, if it's okay with you guys, from a personal development standpoint. And I'll address this to each one of you. Richard, is there anything you believe you cannot do?
Well, that's a very broad. Yeah.
No. And I'm talking about from a personal, if Richard decides I want to do this, or if you say you look at a project and go, oh man, that would be hard as heck. But if you decided that you wanted to go ahead and do that, do you believe that you could not do it? Is there anything that you think that you could look at and not tackle?
Do you know what? It's going to sound very arrogant of me.
No, it won't. It won't.
I would be inclined to say, generally, I don't think there's very much I couldn't do, on the proviso, that I had enough time and it was for me.
And it was for something that you wanted to do, and it was for you. What about you, Joe?
I'd say anybody can do anything. It doesn't matter what your skill level is, because like you've already said, if you put the time in and you put the effort in, but anything you put your mind to is possible. So definitely.
Jamie?
I totally agree with what Joe just said. Now, I've never ever once done any sort of metal working, such as welding or anything like that. However, if someone was to show me how to do one bead, anything to do with welding, just show me it once and I'm off.
Well, see, I think that's the perfect way to wrap this up, because I think there isn't anything that each one of us, if we put our mind to it, couldn't do. Now, there are obviously real world and physical limitations that are out there, but if you're talking about ability, there are people out there that don't have a musical note in their body that think, oh, I could never play a guitar. But if they spent enough time and really wanted to do it, they could play guitar and play it really well. So I don't think, to wrap up this whole thing, know your limitations is, in a real world sense, I think it's applicable. But in a philosophical world, I don't think any of us have any limitations. If you want to do something, I think we all have the ability to do it.
Yeah, so it's almost like a little journey, isn't it?
Yeah,
you start off and you want to learn the guitar. If you get halfway along that journey and you realise that actually you're not very good, or it's just taking too long, or you're bored, or you just want to do something else,
yeah,
you're probably still better at doing whatever it is you were trying to do
than if you had never tried.
You were,
yeah. It comes down to a desire and an interest. If you desire to learn how to do something, it means you're interested in doing it. And if that is there, then go with it. If it isn't there, then don't bother with the fuzziness on the outsides of the exteriors. I mean, who cares? I mean, like, it's not something. I'm never going to be great at the scroll saw. You know why? Because I just don't have an interest there yet. I'm not saying I won't develop one, but right now I don't have one, so it's not something I'm interested in. So I'm not going to go there. But if I wanted to, then I fully believe that I could do it. Yeah, absolutely, I could do it. So I don't think we have limitations. I think we put limitations on ourselves, and a lot of that is based on psychological, practical, physical, and emotional limits that we put on ourselves. I mean, all those 4 headings, you can file whatever your limit is under one of those 4 headings, but it all comes down to whether you want to do it or you don't want to do it.
Definitely give it a go. See how you get on, and don't be afraid to go. I've got there.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Jim Dockrell over in the chat says, I can jump higher than a house, mainly because houses can't jump.
Yes.
Well, see, there's a physical limit. I mean, I would love to be able to just jump over my 2-story house, but physically, I'll probably never be able to do that. It's like, okay, that's outside of the psychological, physical, whatever. Thanks, Jim. You're a real peach, buddy. We love you.
So, what have you guys been up to recently? Have you actually come across anything that has limited you, or are you working on anything where you've got to your limit, or what's going on in your workshops currently?
Weather has been my limit, because I've been working on the shed outside, so it's like getting everything done quick before the ovens open, and it starts tipping it down. So I started on the doors, got 3 door frames made, got 1 door clad, and then it started sleeting and hailing and tipping it down. So of course I had to rush all the tools inside and go inside. But it's a good excuse for me to stop there, and I can put my feet up and watch the telly, so I'm not too bothered about that.
I'll just build this shed in the winter.
That's it. That's the whole reason why I've done it. Why do it in the summer when you've got to do it all back to back?
What about you?
I put out a couple of videos, and now I'm just cleaning up now. So
I haven't seen them. There's no point trying to blag it.
I don't doubt it.
So, actually, wasn't one of them was the ironwood bowl, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then the other one was a winged bowl.
Yeah, for Scully, for Brett. And to be honest, I can't remember the other one.
It was the mini goblet, wasn't it?
Oh, the mini goblet. That's it. Yeah.
See, I know his videos better than him.
Yeah, the pear one. Yes. Oh, and I've got a shout out from Joe on his live.
I'm determined at some point in time we need to start the show and tell Richard that each one of us are guests, and have Richard say, well, I don't know, I have no idea who you are or what you do, because it would just fit. It would just fit.
Yeah.
I am terrible. I don't even know people that I know half the time.
Well, we know, and that's why we kind of sort of, we don't like you, but never mind.
That's fine. You're allowed. But you put a video out drying wood, didn't you?
Yeah.
Because you process quite a bit of your own timber.
Yeah, I do process a lot of my own stuff because I kind of sort of live in a very small kind of sort of woods area, and so I get a lot of my wood from Mother Nature, and so I've really had to learn how to process my own wood so I could get it for free. And so yeah, I did that video just because I picked up a couple slabs at the woodworking show, and I had to process it myself to get it done. And I, you know what, I probably ought to just go and put a video out on this because it might not a lot of people do this kind of stuff, but you know what? Somewhere down the line, like we used to talk, what we talked about a couple episodes ago on the YouTube thing that we did. You know, it may become an evergreen video. People may just, you know, 2-3 years from now, they may find that and find it useful. So I knew it wasn't going to garnish a whole heck of a lot of interest, but I figured I'd put the information out there since I was going to do it anyway. So, you know, whatever.
You should have done some conifers, because then it would have been evergreen.
That's very true.
I should have done it with evergreen. This is an evergreen.
There you go.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. I screwed up, and I only did it with black walnut. Oh, pardon me.
There you go. Seasonal. You need to think these things through.
Should have been around Thanksgiving when people eating walnuts. Oh my God. Can I tell you who I've been watching this week so we can
Of
get
course.
this thing?
Yeah.
I have been watching a YouTube channel called Master of None. It's a relatively new channel. It's a young channel, but he put out a video earlier this week where he made himself a benchtop router table, Richard, and you should check this out because he did, I think, a pretty superb job on it. It's a pretty cool project, and I bet there are a number of people out there that would probably like to make their own if they don't have one as well. But it was a benchtop router table that he made for himself, and it was pretty cool. I just thought that I went, you know what? This guy's out there, he's getting stuff done, and he's a new guy. I want to throw a shout out his way. So Master of None. If you have a chance, go look him up on YouTube and give him some love.
Do you know what? I will confess that I did actually watch that video.
Oh, get out of here!
That one, and yeah, you're right. That is, you know, it does exactly what it needs to be. It's not overly complicated. It just gets the job done.
Gets it done, and he shows you how to do it. Yep, it's cool. It's awesome. So good for him. Awesome chance. Yeah. Master of None. Check him out.
What about you other two?
You want to go first, Joe?
Go on, Jamie.
All right. Well, before I do, over on Jamie's page, I am going to get that little jingle made up and put into the podcast.
Do it.
Right. Since I was warned that I weren't allowed to do it before the podcast,
Jamie's page,
I'm going to do it now because we're live. Right. I'm officially the only one on the podcast now below 5K. So congratulations to me.
Congratulations.
Right. Because I'm not allowed to congratulate Chris.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chris. Secondly, there's a couple of new YouTube channels out there. Makers Wanted, which used to be on Ryan Bitter's channel, Waylight Creations, has now got its own YouTube channel called Makers Wanted.
Awesome.
So, yeah, all of that's going to be all on one channel now. And secondly, and I'm going to warn you now,
don't worry, Mark.
You asked for it, and they're delivering. Sophie from Make It Soph and her friend Binky have started a channel, and it's called Soph Squared.
Oh,
okay,
God.
So yeah.
Is that with a number 2, or is that actually the word squared?
No, it's the word squared.
Do we get to travel with them through McDonald's again? I mean, I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Blooming nightmare.
That was awesome. That was awesome, by the way. Anyway, go ahead.
Carry
and anyway, that's it for Jamie's page. Anyway, my shout out. I'm not going to tell you the entire story because he can describe it better than what I can. But my shout out goes to Heath Knuckles. And his video today was his video was called Noah's Dino Egg.
Yes.
And the reason was there was a young lad in the UK that has he's on the autism spectrum, and his mother contacted Heath and said, well, they had a conversation basically back and forth, and he watches Heath's videos, and he watched one of Heath's previous videos where he made one called Origins, and he said it looked like a dinosaur egg, and Heath confirmed it. But in this one, he actually made Noah a dino egg, and he sent it to Noah.
That's awesome.
He's got his personalized video now on YouTube.
You are the man, Mr. Knuckles.
He's a dude.
Couldn't love you more than we already do. Couldn't love you more.
Yeah.
I mean, friggin' awesome.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
It's excellent. So, yeah, that's it.
Wicked. Joe, you got anything you've been watching?
Yeah, there's actually a new channel. New challenge in the community. It's called the 1 kilo of wood challenge. Now, I'm not sure what that actually equates to in the States. It's something like
it means wood's not straight.
2.2 pounds.
Well, yeah, 1 kilo is 2.2 pounds. Yeah, 2.2.
Yeah. Well, you need to start to use proper measurements anyway. So we'll stick to 1 kilo, and that's over time.
I'll just leave.
You know,
now.
it's true. Okay, we need to have a podcast about measurements and why the metric system is the best. But it's over on the channel From the Heart Wood MK. That's like all one word, but there is a link in the description. So I'll just go to the link and click it and you'll get there. All the information is in like a separate file link with all the rules and stuff to get entered. And in the video, he actually gives an example of using like less than 1 kilo of wood to make a project. So you can get done more than you would think. And I just think it's a good concept. We've had like 2x4 challenges and pallet wood challenge and stuff. And of course, it's following that kind of tradition. So it'd be interesting to see what people do with that.
That is cool. That's, you know, and I don't want to take away from that, but I just got to say, Joe, if our next podcast is titled "Why the Metric System is Better," I just want to go ahead and promote this as being obviously a very non-biased podcast. Why the metric system is better, and let's talk about it.
We need to make that like a first versus, and then just play devil's advocate. Split the sides at the beginning of the podcast and just argue the entire time.
Well, if you're
on, pretty much what we do every week anyway.
Yeah.
Well, if you're listening to us after Wednesday, the link to the 1 kilo challenge is down below. Check it out because that's actually pretty cool. I agree with Joe on that, but you know,
yeah, it is.
I just take exception with his assertion that we should do a non-biased podcast about why the metric system is better. It's like, oh, wait a minute, hold on, that's not exactly. Anyway, all right, whatever.
Jim Dockwell said, "How many grams in an ounce?" All the stoners will get that one right.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it's good enough for the cartels, it's good enough for me.
all the cokeheads will know that right off the bat. That's $100. No, that's $250. Okay, whatever. Anyway, I'm sorry. We should wrap this up, Richard. Unless you have a shout out, please do.
I do. In fact, I have 2 shout outs because I originally came in this week with only one, but after Jamie's shout out, it reminded me of a second one. So my first shout out is actually for Alan. Bless his cotton mill socks. He puts out some rather.
I love that.
The Canadian.
Oh my God, I love that video. I know what you're going to say.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Alan's got a very kind of
unique,
almost slapstick, but yes, unique sense of humour. And he, you know, if you followed his channel for any period of time and you still follow it, then you've probably got the same kind of sense of humour. But he made a giant guitar pick. I'll leave it at that. It's funny. He's just Alan clowning around as Alan does best, and I was in stitches because it is very funny.
Well, he named it.
You'd want Alan to send it to you.
He named it the nickname.
He has already.
He named it the nickname for Richard. The nickname for Richard pick.
He did kind of dedicate it to me, I think. Yes.
I think me and Chris are a bit upset anyway because we didn't end up with that. He showed in the video that he was going to send it to us.
Yeah.
Then he chose somebody different.
He said, I thought about this guy, me, and he thought about that guy, Joe. Then he went to Shogun Jimmy, and then he went, no, and then he gave it to somebody else. I'm kind of pissed off about that because I would actually like to have that Richard pick.
And it was a scroll saw project as well, so you can't say fairer than that. Bless him.
Yeah, it was.
So that's my first shout out. The second one is, have you guys seen Bobby Duke's latest?
Yes.
Where he carves the crow's head from the paint splat.
Bordite.
Ford, yeah, it's dry paint layers, Fordite. You know, as with all of Bobby's videos, you know, not only are they amazing to watch and then the end product, but they're hilarious as well. I love the fact that he just sits there and he just clowns around, and they're just funny. So, and I'm kind of getting back into watching the funny videos where somebody's making something and just being, you know, having a laugh and a joke and not taking themselves or anything else in the world too seriously.
He's a great guy. I mean, he came on with us, so I mean, he's obviously humble.
yeah.
He takes a lot.
How do you not like a guy like that? Awesome.
Wicked. I think that pretty much wraps up the show this evening. Does anyone disagree or got anything they need to get off their chest before we leave?
Not with 7 minutes over. Hurry up.
Yeah. Yes, boss. Yes, boss. Right. Well, if you are still with us, then God bless you all. Thank you for listening. If you indeed still are listening, we'll be back next week talking about something, possibly weights and measures. I have no idea at this point in time, but keep an eye out and you'll find out ahead of time. So till next week, we'll see you later.
All right. You guys have a great week.
See you next week.
Take it easy, everybody.